I took a job monitoring an empty highway that doesn't exist on any map. The first vehicle came on my 41st night, and I remember exactly what I was doing, because for 40 nights, I had been doing nothing at all. I was heating soup on a hot plate that tripped the breaker if you ran it with the space heater, which meant every meal was a negotiation with the cold. The station was a single wide prefab on a gravel pad in the high desert of Harney County, Oregon, 40-some miles from the nearest town with a stoplight. Outside, wind came off the alkali flats in long sheets and dragged sand across the siding like someone brushing a broom over a coffin lid. Inside, 4 monitors, 4 cameras, 1 road. The road ran north to south through a shallow basin. 2 lanes, no shoulder to speak of, cracked and patched but maintained, the striping fresh enough to be recent. On camera 2, you could see it come out of a low cut in the rimrock and run straight for what the survey documents called 11 miles before bending east and out of frame. Sagebrush, cinder gravel, a right-of-way fence sagging on cedar posts. Mileposts on the west side, green and reflective, standard Oregon DOT issue. In 40 nights, I had logged 0 vehicles. That was the job, log vehicles. I was hired as a corridor monitoring technician by an outfit called Cascadia Corridor Services, LLC, which had a 3-page website and a Salem address that turned out to be a mailbox store. I knew this because I looked. I wasn't stupid, just unemployed. 9 years with a traffic systems contractor doing its work. Loop detectors, camera calibration, dynamic message signs, the whole nervous system of a modern highway, and then the contract got restructured and 40 of us learned about it by email on a Thursday. So when a woman named Elaine Pruitt offered 11 weeks at $4,000 a week to sit in a shack and count cars, I took the interview, and when the interview lasted 8 minutes and consisted almost entirely of questions about my family, I took the job anyway. I noticed. That's the part I want to be honest about. She asked whether I had anyone waiting on me and seemed pleased when I said not really. She asked, twice, in slightly different words, whether I'd ever lost someone in a way that was never explained. I told her the truth. My brother Danny disappeared in 2017 on US 20 between Burns and Riley, driving a 1994 Bronco the color of an old dime. They found nothing. Not the truck, not a shoe, not a smear on a guardrail. 80 miles of open highway, and my brother stepped out of the world in the middle of it. Elaine said, "I'm very sorry," in a voice that didn't sound sorry so much as confirmed. The paperwork came the next day. There was a laminated card taped above the desk, printed in a plain sans serif, and I read it so many times over 11 weeks that I could recite it in my sleep, and eventually did. 1. Log every vehicle by time, direction, type, color, and plate, if legible. 2. Do not use radios, hailing devices, headlights, or any exterior lighting to signal the roadway. 3. Do not go past the cattle guard. 4. If the ledger and the monitors disagree, the ledger is correct. 5. The page must close on 0. That last one I didn't understand for a long time. The 4th one I understood too late. The ledger was a physical book. Green cloth boards, sewn signatures, columns ruled by hand in India ink. 2 columns. In and out. It was the only part of the job that wasn't digital. The monitors were a convenience, Elaine said. The ledger was the record. 40 nights of zeros. I got good at the silence. I read paperbacks off a shelf the previous tech had left. I did pull-ups on a bar wedged in the bathroom doorway. I watched the light change on the rimrock, which is the one thing out there that will never bore you, the way the basalt goes from ash gray to violet to a red like something healing. Then, on night 41, at 2:14 in the morning, headlights came out of the cut. I dropped the spoon in the soup and burned 2 fingers fishing it out, and I remember standing there sucking my knuckles and staring at camera 2 like it had insulted me. A sedan, southbound at maybe 50. Pale, hard to say what color in infrared. but pale and low, an older body style with that long, soft trunk they stopped making around 1990. It passed camera 2, then camera 3 11 seconds later, then camera 4, and then it went around the bend and the basin was empty again. I wrote it in the ledger, 2:14 a.m. Southbound, passenger sedan, light. Plate not legible. A single tally in the OUT column because south was out. And I sat looking at that one mark alone in a field of nothing until the sky went gray. I had a completely reasonable explanation, which was, it's a road, cars use roads, somebody got turned around off 20 and would be back inside an hour swearing at their phone. The strangeness wasn't the car. The strangeness was that it was the first one in 41 days. Because here's what I'd already figured out and hadn't let myself finish thinking. The road wasn't on any map. I'd checked in week 1 the way you do. Not on the state highway map, not on the county road inventory, not on the federal aid system. On satellite imagery, there was a faint pale line through the basin that could have been a 2-track or a fence scar, and when you zoomed to where pavement should have resolved, it went soft, the way old imagery does over places nobody bothers to fly. The mileposts said otherwise. The pavement said otherwise. Someone maintained that road, and someone had striped it within the last 3 years, and I know fresh thermoplastic when I see it. 2 nights later, 3 vehicles, all southbound, all between 1 and 4. A pickup with a camper shell, a station wagon with a luggage rack, a small hatchback moving slow enough that I could read the plate. Oregon, but the old blue and yellow issue they retired in the 80s. By the end of that week, I had 11 vehicles and 11 marks, and every one of them was southbound, and none of them ever came back. I called Elaine on the SAT phone. She answered on the second ring at 4 in the morning like she'd been sitting up. "You've started counting," she said. "I've started counting." "Good. It usually takes 6 weeks. You're early." I let that sit. It usually takes 6 weeks for cars to drive on a road, for a technician to see them. She had a flat, careful way of speaking, like someone reading a statement into a record. "Wes, I'm going to ask you to do something difficult, which is to do the job exactly as written and not the job as you understand it. Log the vehicles. Don't go out to the road. Close the page on 0. That's the part I don't get. The page closes when in and out are equal. Nothing has come in, ever. Wind on one end of the line or the other." "Then the page hasn't closed," she said. "That's all right. It's not your page." She hung up before I could ask whose it was. The snow came 4 nights after that. It started around 11 fine, dry flakes coming almost sideways, and by 2, the whole basin was going white. I stood at the window with coffee and watched the sage disappear and thought, at least it'll show me tire tracks. At 3, I realized the road was black, not plowed, not wet. Bare and dry, the striping crisp, snow coming down over it and simply not arriving, the way rain doesn't arrive on the far side of a window. I went out with a flashlight. The gravel spur was under 2 inches. The cattle guard was under 2 inches. And then there was a line, an actual line, straight as a chalk snap, running the length of the right-of-way fence, and on the far side of it the ground was dry as August. I stood there for a while with snow melting in my collar, and I put my hand across that line, palm down, close enough to feel for a difference in temperature. There wasn't one. There was only the sensation, unmistakable and impossible to argue with, of my hand being somewhere my body wasn't. I pulled it back and went inside and didn't sleep. 2 nights after that, the ledger wrote itself. I want to be precise about this because it's the thing that broke my ability to keep calling any of it a misunderstanding. I logged a vehicle at 1:47, closed the book, made coffee. When I opened it again at 2:10, there was a second entry under mine, in handwriting that was unmistakably my own. The way I cross a 7, the way my capital S starts too low. Reading. 2:31 a.m. Southbound. Van, maroon, roof rack. Plate not legible. It was 2:12. I sat with my hands in my lap and did not touch the pen. I watched camera 2 the way you watch a phone you know is about to ring, and at 2:31 by the clock on the wall, headlights came out of the cut, and a maroon van with a roof rack went down the basin at a steady 50 and around the bend to the east. Rule 4. If the ledger and the monitors disagree, the ledger is correct. That night I understood that the book was not a record of the road. The book was the road's opinion, and the monitors were only my permission to agree with it. The crawl space was how I found out the rest. The building sat on piers with skirting around the bottom, and in the middle of week 7 the waterline froze, and I went under with a heat gun and a headlamp. Wired to a joist with baling wire and wrapped in 2 contractor bags was a milk crate. Inside were 11 ledgers. I brought them up, laid them out by date, and understood almost immediately that I was the 12th person to sit in that chair, and that the road had been counted since at least 1971. The handwriting changed every few years. Some were meticulous. A man named R. Alvarez kept his columns like an accountant, with notations in the margins in Spanish. Weather, moon phase, the number of coyotes he heard. Some deteriorated. A woman in the mid-'80s started riding the same vehicle over and over for 9 pages. A maroon van, and then stopped mid-page, and the next entries were in a different hand. Every ledger had the same shape. Long empty stretches, then vehicles, always southbound, always between midnight and dawn. And every ledger's final page had the same words at the bottom, in whatever hand had kept it. Page open, never 0. Not once in 50 years. Alvarez had gone further than the others. Folded into the backboard of his 1998 book was a sheet of graph paper with the basin drawn on it, the road, the mileposts, and one line in small block capitals. The mileposts count down. They do not reach 0. I went out at first light with binoculars, which isn't against the rules if you don't cross the cattle guard, and stood at the gate in a wind that made my eyes stream, looking north at the nearest post. It said 9. I'd looked at that post 100 times on camera too, and it had said 9 every time. I walked the fence line south inside the wire until I could see the next one down. It should have said 8. It said 9. I photographed both. When I put the photos side by side on the monitor that evening, both signs read 7, and so did the frame grabbed from camera, 2 taken at noon, which I had personally watched being recorded. 4 days later, standing at the gate at dawn with the binoculars up, I watched a 7 become a 5. There was no transition. There was a blink, mine, and on the other side of it the number was different, and had always been different, and some quiet part of my brain went ahead and revised its memory to match before I could stop it. That was the day I stopped being a man doing a strange job and became a man in a strange situation, and I felt the difference physically, like a floor giving under my heel. I drove out. I'm not proud of the panic, but I want to be accurate. I got in my truck and drove the 18 miles of BLM road back to the county highway and sat at the top of the grade with 2 bars of signal and the heater roaring, going through everything. I searched the disappearances. Harney County missing persons, then Malheur, Lake, Grant, and then I stopped restricting it because the pattern didn't need me to. A couple in a station wagon in 1979, last seen fueling in Bend, luggage rack on the roof. A hatchback in 1984, a woman driving home to boys. A man in a pickup with a camper shell in 1991, hunting season never found. A family van, maroon, roof rack, 1986, 4 people. I had written them all in the ledger. I had spent 6 weeks writing obituaries without knowing it. And there was a photograph in a bulletin archive item from 2017 of a 1994 Bronco the color of an old dime, with a dented rear quarter panel from where Danny backed into a loading dock the summer he worked at the feed store. I called Elaine from the ridge. "You knew," I said. "Yes. That's why you hired me, not despite it, because of it. Yes." No hesitation, no softening. I hated her for the steadiness and also, in some sideways way, respected it. Technicians who have no one out there stop seeing traffic within a month. Their attention slides. They log zeros for 11 weeks, go home, and they're fine. Technicians who have someone out there keep looking, and the looking is the job, Wes. Not the writing, the looking. Who are you people? There's no organization worth explaining. There's a maintenance easement, an escrow account established in 1968, and 11 weeks of somebody's attention at a time, and there has been for 50-some years. Every time it lapses, something comes off that road onto a live highway and takes people. She breathed out. Do you want the mechanism, or do you want to do the job? The mechanism. I don't have it. I have the pattern. When the corridor is observed, it stays a closed loop. Traffic runs south, re-enters at the north cut, runs south again, and the mileposts hold. When it isn't observed, the mileposts drift, and when they drift far enough, an exit appears on US 20 that wasn't there in the morning. Green sign, standard reflective sheeting, correct font, and somebody takes it. I thought about my brother pulling off a highway he'd driven 400 times because a sign told him there was something there. Then let them out. You're describing a road full of people. Open the gate. The gate's not a door. It's a fence. A pause. Rule 5 is the door. And I'm telling you, as someone who has read every ledger you have in front of you, nobody has ever closed the page. 2 people tried. I only have the ledgers of 1. I asked what happened to the other, and she said, nothing. That's the problem. Nothing happened to him at all, and I didn't understand that for another 9 days. But I did understand something else that night, and it changed the shape of everything behind it. I'd gone back to the ledgers to look for Danny for August of 2017 for a gray Bronco in somebody else's handwriting. I found it, logged by a tech named Pell at 4:36 in the morning, 3 days after my brother vanished, described accurately down to the dent. I sat with that for a long time. Then I went looking for the beginning, because Elaine had said 1968, and the oldest book in the crate said 1971, and I wanted to know what happened in between. The 1971 ledger had a front page I'd skipped. Most of them did. A header block with the text name, the escrow file number, and a line labeled Corridor Supervisor, and I'd never read it because supervisors are the least interesting thing in any document ever produced. Every single one of them said the same name, E. Pruitt. Alvarez in 1998. Pell in 2017. 51 years of supervisor signatures in 5 different pens, and the signature never changed. Not the slant, not the pressure, not the way the P came down and hooked without lifting. I'm not a document examiner. I didn't have to be. You know your own mother's handwriting across 40 years, and you can see it age. This hadn't. And tucked in the 1971 book, behind the cloth where the board had come unglued, was a photograph. 4 people on a gravel pad in front of a prefab building that was newer, but was undeniably the one I was sitting in. 2 men in work coats. A man in a tie holding a rolled drawing. And a woman at the end of the row, 30s, dark hair pinned back, one hand up against the sun, wearing a look of enormous patience. On the back in pencil, Corridor Establishment, Oct 1968. I called her. I let it ring 11 times. When she answered, I said, "Who am I talking to?" And Elaine Pruitt said, in that flat, careful voice, "You're talking to the first one who tried." I didn't say anything. 2 people went out to the road, Wes. One of them is a ledger in your crate. The other one is on the phone with you. A sound that wasn't quite a laugh. I went out in October of 1968 for my husband. I got exactly as far as the pavement, and I understood, standing there, that I hadn't changed the arithmetic at all. I just added to it. Nothing happened to me. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Nothing has happened to me since. Then how are you? I have a telephone, and I have time, and I have an escrow account I set up before I walked out there, because I was thorough even then. Her voice did something for the first time. It thinned. I hire people. It's the only useful thing left. And I hire the ones who will keep looking, and I know exactly what that costs them, and I do it anyway, because when nobody looks, that road comes off its leash and takes 6 more. You've been out there 58 years. I've been out here about 4 days, Elaine said. Time is the one thing it's generous with. Wes, listen to me now. Don't come out. I have watched 12 people be told this, and I am telling you, the balance cannot be paid by walking into it. Log your vehicles. Close your 11 weeks. Go home. I said okay. I meant it when I said it. That was 9 days before the Broncos stopped. Here's what those 9 days were like, because they matter. I stopped sleeping in any regular way and started sleeping in 20-minute pieces at the desk. Traffic increased, 4 or 5 a night, then 7, then 11 in 90 minutes on a Tuesday. Headlights strung out along the basin like a funeral procession that had lost its hearse. I began to see them better. The infrared was good, and the road was straight, and I learned to freeze frames and zoom. And what I saw, once I let myself, was that the drivers were not distressed. That's what got under my skin worst. They drove the way people drive on a long, empty road at 3 in the morning. One hand at 12, elbow on the door, eyes on the middle distance. The woman in the hatchback was singing. The man in the camper shell pickup had a dog in the passenger seat with its nose out the gap in the window. They didn't look like people in hell. They looked like people on their way somewhere, in the last easy hour before they arrived, and the fact that the hour had lasted since 1991 was not available to them. On the 5th night, a car slowed. An oxidized green 2-door, drifting down past camera 3 at 15 miles an hour, the driver looking back out his window toward the station. A man in his 60s, ball cap. He looked directly at the camera, which shouldn't have been possible. The housings are matte black with no telltale. He raised 2 fingers off the wheel, the way ranchers do. One person out in the middle of nowhere acknowledging another. Then he accelerated and went around the bend. On the 7th night, I logged a white Toyota Tacoma, southbound, 3:03 a.m., with a crack in the windshield running from the passenger A-pillar towards center. I wrote it down before my hand understood what it was writing. Then I put the pen down and went outside in my socks, and my truck was parked exactly where it had been for 7 weeks, cold, dark, snow-dusted, 191,000 miles on it, and a crack in the windshield from a rock outside Ontario. I came back in and looked at the entry a long time. Rule 4 says the ledger is correct. Doesn't say when. On the 9th day, the milepost said 4, and at 3:52 in the morning, the Bronco came out of the cut. I knew it before it cleared the rimrock, from the height of the lights and the way the vehicle sat. It came down the grade onto the flat and slowed, the way you slow when you see something up ahead you weren't expecting, and stopped on the pavement about level with the gate, 200 yards from where I stood at the window with my hand flat on the cold glass. The driver's door opened. A figure stepped out into the wash of his own headlights, hands in his jacket pockets, and looked toward the station. I've thought a great deal about the next 4 minutes, which were the last 4 minutes of my ordinary life, and I don't believe I decided anything. I simply went. I didn't take a coat. I went out into 18 degrees in a flannel shirt and ran down the gravel spur with my breath tearing and my boots skidding, and got the padlock open with hands that had stopped taking instructions and stopped at the cattle guard. Rule 3. He was close enough now that I could see him. Canvas Carhartt with the torn cuff, 24 years old. "Wes?" he said. "Man, what are you doing out here?" 8 years. I was 35, and he was 24, and the wind moved his hair the way it had always moved his hair, and my voice came out sounding like something dragged over gravel. "Danny, come here. Come to the fence." He laughed. That short exhale he did. "You come here. I gotta get going. I'm supposed to be at Mom's by..." He stopped. Something crossed his face. He looked down at his own hands like they'd said something. "I'm supposed to be there by..." "Danny, what time is it? Come to the fence." He walked toward me the way you walk in a dream someone else is having, and about 10 feet from the cattle guard he stopped as if he'd reached a wall. I watched him try again and fail, and watched him not understand why. He gestured at nothing. I know, Wes. My name broke in his mouth. How long? I told him. He put both hands on his knees and made a sound I'll hear for the rest of whatever this is. Then he straightened and asked the only question that mattered. How do I get out? And I knew. I'd known since the crawl space, but I hadn't let it come all the way up until my brother asked out loud. The page must close on 0. 11 ledgers. 50 years. Thousands of marks in OUT and not one in. It was never a study. It was a balance sheet. That road had run a deficit since before I was born, and every soul on it was a debit nobody had ever matched, and nobody had closed a page because closing a page meant putting something in the column that goes the other way. Elaine had walked out there and added herself as another debit and made no difference at all, and had been telling me so for 9 days in the plainest words she had. The looking is the job, not the writing, which meant the writing was something else. Stay there, I told my brother. Don't move. Don't get back in that truck. Wes, look at the fence post. Just keep looking at it. I ran back up the spur and left the door open, and the wind put every loose paper in the room into the air, and I sat down in front of the ledger and had to press my hands flat on the desk for 10 full seconds before I could pick up the pen. Then I did the arithmetic, and I need to get this exactly right, because it wasn't nobility. It was arithmetic, and I was the only integer available. A page isn't a ledger. I couldn't balance 50 years. I could balance a page, and my page had 41 entries since night 41. 41 out. 0 in. Elaine had been wrong about one thing only. She'd offered the road a person. A road doesn't count people. A road counts vehicles. And there was one vehicle on that property that had never crossed the cattle guard. The road had already logged it, southbound, 2 nights early, in my own handwriting. Here's what I wrote, slowly, in the best hand I could manage, because the record is the record. 4.D09 AM, northbound, Ford Bronco, gray, plate légible. OUT struck, entry made in. And beneath it, 41 times, 1 for each entry on that page, my own plate. White Tacoma, cracked windshield. 41 debits to cancel 41 debits. One vehicle offered 41 times, which is either exactly how the accounting works or exactly the kind of thing a desperate man tells himself at 4 a.m. At the bottom I wrote, page closed, 0. Then I took the keys off the hook. The gate was already open. I drove down the spur and stopped with my front tires an inch from the steel, got out, and shouted at my brother to turn the Bronco around. Point it north! He did it. 8 years dead or lost or driving, and he still did what his big brother told him, and the Bronco swung around with its lights cutting across the sage and the fence and the rimrock. I got back in. I understood that a mark in a book is only a promise, and that the road does not accept promises, and I put it in drive and crossed the cattle guard. The tires drummed on the steel. Badump. That's all it was. That's all it has ever been. I stopped on the pavement facing south. He was facing north, 20 feet away, and I rolled the window down, and the cold came in, and I said, Go. Come with me. That's not how it works. Wes, Mom's still in the house on Anderson. She kept your bike. My throat closed and I pushed the rest out anyway. Drive north. Don't stop at the station. Don't look at the mileposts. Take the BLM road east, 18 miles to 20, and turn left. He said my name one more time. I have that. Then he drove north, and I watched him in the mirror until the cut took him, and he did not come back around from the south, which is how I knew it had worked. Time out here is a strange currency, so I'll only say it has been a while. The road runs south. It comes out of the cut and crosses the basin and bends east, and then, in a way I can't describe, because the describing part of me doesn't work on that stretch. It's the cut again, and I'm coming down onto the flat with my headlights on, and the sage going by. The heater works. The radio gets one station that plays nothing, just carrier and hiss, and I've come to find that comforting. I've met a few of them. The man in the green two-door pulls alongside sometimes, and we drive at 45 with our windows down. He doesn't know his own name anymore, but he knows he's from somewhere near Silver Lake, and he's decent company. The woman in the hatchback sings, and I don't stop her. And once, early on, a car came up on my left that I hadn't seen before, a big, pale sedan from another era, driven by a woman with dark hair pinned back, a satellite phone in a cradle on her dash. She looked over at me for a long moment with enormous patience and something that might have been apology, and then she drifted back and let me go, and I have not seen her since. But every 11 weeks the light in the station changes hands, so I know she's still working. I pass that station every circuit. About 4 months in, 4 of whatever I mean by months, the lamp changed and someone rearranged the desk, and there was a shape in the chair, small, dark-haired, leaning forward with her chin in her hand, the way you do when you're 26 and bored, and 11 weeks is a very long time. And I think, every circuit, don't stop looking, please. Keep looking, and close your page on 0 if you can, and if you can't, at least keep the mileposts where they are. The ones out here are the lucky ones. We got taken off a road. The ones taken next won't be. The posts read 9 again. They've read 9 for a long time. She's doing well. There's only one thing I haven't been able to make sense of, and I've turned it over on every pass. 3 nights ago, coming down out of the cut, I saw headlights ahead of me that were new. Not one of ours. You learn the traffic, you learn how a car sits. I came up on it slow. A blue Corolla, 12 or 15 years old, with a wobble in the left rear wheel that my mother has been meaning to get fixed since before I lost my job. Both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2, the way she's driven since 1984. Her purse on the passenger seat, her mouth moving, looking straight ahead down the road as though she'd been told there was something at the end of it. I laid on the horn. I flashed my lights. I pulled alongside and screamed her name into the wind. She did not turn her head. She has never turned her head on any pass since, which means one of 2 things. Either she went out looking for the son who came back and couldn't remember which one of us it was, or Danny made it home and told her where I was, and she believed him.